let's talk about one of my favorite commanders, and it's Kenrith. Here we go. Welcome back to the channel, guys. If you are new here, I'm Ian. I create MTG content and better streaming content. I know Kenrith has been very popular nowadays, or like ever since it was printed, because of the actual amounts of abilities that it currently has. But I want to share with you the current takes that I do with the deck. What I love about Kenrith is it is very versatile. It has 5 abilities and all of them can be potentially your CEDH win condition. First one, it gives all creatures haste. Second one, it pumps your creatures. Third one, gains you life. Fourth one, you actually draw cards. You can draw cards or your opponent can draw cards, so that could be a win condition unto itself. The last part even is a reanimation. So all of the things that I love to do is in one card. The main purpose of this deck is actually your Kenrith is your main win condition.
Oh my god!
So how I do this? Let me introduce you to the deck. First, let's get off the boring part. Now, I know you're gonna tell me, oh, this combo has been played out. But CEDH, ever since this card has been printed, this 3 will always be a staple. So I'm getting this one out of the way. It is just there for the sake of I got you win condition. It's just good to be there. If you ask me why, I don't know. It's just there. To be honest, Thassa's Oracle onto itself is a very strong card, so that's why it's there. Plus, if you already have a Thassa's Oracle and you have black source in your mana, then go with the package. Doesn't hurt. What I love about this deck is that the mana base is actually your win condition, because Kenrith has a bajillion effects and all it needs is a lot of mana.
Yeah, man.
If you have unlimited mana source, you can virtually win the game out of nowhere. So, building the base blocks, let's get the basics out of the way. First, let me introduce you to the artifact enchantment pile. Obviously, from left to right, we have your Dark Ritual and Burnt Offering. This is just so that your cards don't get exiled and Kenrith can reanimate it. This one, well, you're playing black, so might as well. This is your actual artifact packages. So you have your Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Fell War Stone, Grim Monolith, Arcane Signet, and Basalt Monolith. Honestly, some of these are interchangeable. You can actually go with Mana Vault here and Grim Monolith here. Either or, it works. So this one, you can exchange this for a Mana Vault. That's fine. The main purpose of these mana-dorks is actually just to synergize with your actual infinite mana combos, which I will get to the next turn. And finally, the enchantment duo, Wild Growth and Utopia's Pro, usually when you're playing a very, very green-centric base or mana base, which we are. Now that's out of the way, let me slide that over here. And let's get into the meat and potatoes of the deck.
They are boulders.
The meat and potatoes of the deck are actually the creature cards or the mana producing creature cards. Here they are, the full suite. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 mana base. Well, arguably, Kenan is not really a mana producer, but the ability or amplifies all of these abilities, so that's very good. You have your usual 1-drop suite. The only thing that was added here is the Ignoble Hierarch, but everything else is the same. Birds of Paradise, Finhorned, Llanowar Elf, Elves of the Shadow, Arbor Elf, which synergizes with both of your enchantment duo right here. Bassine's Pilgrim, Ignoble Hierarch, Noble Hierarch, Priest of Titanium. In this part, these are usually the cards that will synergize with your infinite mana combos, because these are the multi-mana producers. The forms of Priest of Titania, especially, just note that this actually produces mana for all elves in play, including your opponents. So, more often than not, if your opponent is playing green, there will be elves. Unbigly Sad, you have Bloom Tender and Furborrow Elder, essentially doing the same thing. And Wildwood Channeler, basically a Priest of Titania, but is better because it produces any color. Now, if you have these in play, the only thing you need left to do is to find out the other half of the combo, which would untap these permanents. Let's get into it. Your combos are as follows. First off, you have the Dramatic and Isochron Scepter combo. Untap all non-land permanents you control. Obviously, this is a CEDH staple, so that's why I said this will also combo off with all your mana-dorks. If you haven't seen my last video, this is actually the second win condition by untapping all of the mana-dorks in play, but this time it actually synergizes with your creatures. Don't worry, if your creature was just casted and you have Kenrith in play, you can actually just pay red and get everyone hastes. That's why Kenrith is the best.
大丈夫。僕最強だから。
That being said, we also have Pemin's Aura and Free from the Real. Essentially, it's trying to do the same thing in this specific deck. They're trying to untap your creature. So if you have, say for example, a Wirewood Channeler here, it untaps the creature. Pay blue, untap the creature. If you have multiples of elves in play, you actually basically win the game. And now once this mana combo, Infinite Loop, has already been established, so say for example, you have a Wirewood Symbiote with any other elves in play, attach a Freed from the Real on it, produces blue, can produce infinite blue mana, and then from there you can produce infinite colors of any color that is in play. Then you cast your Kenrith, then it can either target your opponent and make them draw their library, or can actually target your dorks, make them as big as possible. If you can target your opponent, because this is your instant win condition, make them draw their library. But if that's not possible, then you can actually just go on and make your dorks as big as possible, or draw your library, cast all your dorks, make them as big as possible, and then win the game from combat damage. Classic. That is the main combo. What is our backup plan aside from the Thassa's Oracle? Well, we do have some selections right here. Okay, these are your plan B. Essentially, these are your second win condition. If Kenrith is actually not a viable option, you can actually make sure that you draw your library, make sure that you draw everything in hand, and then Thassa's Oracle for the win. If they get to deal with your Thassa's Oracle, you can actually, or counter the Thassa's Oracle, you can recur it. As long as you have infinite mana, you can do it. Same is true with Trashos. Trashos in itself, they functionally do the same thing, except Thassager is a bit better in my opinion in this deck because it can recur anything on the board, especially with your interaction piece. When your opponent has a Pillow 4th established, or a hate piece, or a stacks piece on the board presence. Lastly, Staff of Domination is actually a hybrid of your combo piece right here and a win condition onto itself. If you have 5 or more mana, you can actually create an infinite loop already here by untapping target creature and then untapping the Staff of Dominance, and then from there you can say you can draw the card as well. Same thing as every piece in here. When you draw your library, actually basically have all your win conditions in hand, and you can win the game from there. Now that's done, what is the next facet of a CEDH deck to make it a CEDH deck and not a Mon deck? Well, it's reliability. When everything else fails during the point in time, you need to have value cards, or cards that will turn the favor towards you or gain your momentum from there. That makes sense. Ideally, before, what happens is that your commander is actually that. That's why Thrashos was a popular commander before, because it is a card advantage all to itself, and at the same time Kenrith. However, Kenrith is 5 mana, that's why it's not really that great of a value card in a sense compared to Thrashos. That's why we're bringing the 5th part of this deck and we're calling it Value Town. Value Town. So these are cards that doesn't necessarily win you the game, but turns the favor enough so that it can make you win the game. It does it by reducing the amount of activation costs that your key pieces here has. From 4, it usually reduces it down to 2 or 1 even. Each of these cards are redundant from left to right. You will see it in the sequence it was printed, Training Grounds. Basically, what it says is it reduces the activated ability of creatures in play that you own by 2, but it cannot reduce it less than 1. So every time your activation cost will always be 1, or any colored mana that is required for that specific activation. Biomancer's Familiar, basically the same, and Zerda, the Dawnbringer, functionally the same, printed much later. Now admittedly we can do a companion here, but because we do have a Training Ground, which is not an activated ability, then we can't have Zerda in play. What this functionally does is it reduces the cost of each abilities here, except for this one, because it's not a creature, but it does the trick. You can draw the cards and gain momentum from there. Alright, now that's done, let's proceed to the tutors. Now you could argue that Vampiric Tutor would have been better, but because we are leaning towards a different color, and black is essentially a splasher, that's why I didn't go for it. Most of your combo pieces are creature driven anyway, and Kenrith can give it haste, so most of these are creature to be searched, to be fetched, and then this one is to search for your enchantment, either your Training Ground or your key pieces like Free from the Real and Penance Aura. And finally, Crop Rotation. Crop Rotation actually just search this 3 utility land against Cradle. Essentially, you know what it is. Cavern of Souls makes your creatures uncounterable, especially if you're casting your commander. And finally, Homeward Path, so that you get to take care of those pesky Gilded Rakes. You know what I mean. That's done. We do have something new here, and it's a Pyre of Heroes. Now, if you notice on your mana base, it's always either Elves or Druid. So this is very, very useful when you want to scale up your, say, your Llanowar Elf to a Priest of Titania. Easy. Let's proceed to the next part, and this is the Defenders, or aka your counter spells. Let me take this one away. Alright, notice that the counter spell suite here is either 1 to cast or anti-blue. You have your Red Elemental Blast and Pyroblast, because your deck actually relies on card drawing, so usually a Hull Breacher wrecks your game plan. And then you have your Mental Misstep, Silence when you're trying to combo off, Flusterstorm to take care of any of the cards actually that's on the field or being casted. Swan Song, Mana Drain, Fierce Guardianship, and Deflecting SWAT. Now, if you see, there's a theme here. We didn't go with Force of Will or Force of Negation, primarily because the color, if you look at the pie chart, it's mostly actually green. So there's no point in doing a very card-intensive costs. The cards that I chose in my deck are either doing one function and also is meant to do another. So utility is high in my totem pole. That being said, let's look at the rest of the cards in the deck. The rest of the cards are subdivided into utility cards. These are their filter. You have your card filter trifecta in the form of Preordain, Ponder, and Brainstorm. You have your Sylvan library here, as I said, because we are mainly green, and Mystic Remora. The idea behind this deck is that we don't have time to go with Rhystic Study. That's why we want to put in Rhystic Remora as a 1-drop whenever you're trying to go combo off, because that is where you will try to recoup your card lost when you're trying to combo off. Usually, if you're the first one to combo off on a CEDH table, you would not be successful in doing so unless it's very, very early. Now, the deck doesn't really want to go off on turn 1. They want to go off on either turn 3 or 4. It's kind of like a modern deck, but a very, very stable deck nonetheless. That being said, I do have a utility sweep for the creatures right here. Jace functions as a card filter, at the same time a card recursion. Sylvan Safekeeper is safekeep your mana producer. Make no mistake, the key cards with this deck are the mana producers, so you gotta protect them. But to be honest, there's a number of win conditions to the deck, so you don't need to protect one win condition. Usually the first win condition is the bait, and almost it's always recurring win condition in the form of Kenrith. Right, so we'll Sylvan Safekeeper, safekeep your mana producers. Same thing for Spellkite, Vexing Shusher, and Caustic Caterpillar to take care of either an artifact or enchantment hate. And finally, the Fauna Shaman. It's basically just to search for your mana producers as well, or your enablers whenever you need it. Alright, last but not least on the utility pile, you have your creature hates, targeted creature hates. You have your permanent hates as well. You have your reality shift, which is technically a creature hate, but at the same time, if you partner it well, like for example, if you partner it with our Tasigur, becomes a win condition unto itself, your opponent can actually manifest the entire deck into play, and therefore, when it's their turn, lose the game. And finally, Oko, who takes care of most of the issues on the board, be it creature or artifact. Alright, that's it. The rest of the deck are actually lands. So if you want to see the deck list, it's on the description section below. If you want to suggest any iterations or any changes into the deck, let me know in the comment section down below. Alright, I hope this deck tech is useful to you, and as always, stay safe, y'all.